But also, are we good enough nowadays?
I think we're live.
Hi there.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone who is joining us. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi
Welcome.
there. Thank you.
I'm so excited for us to be having this conversation. I'm actually, I feel like there's so much I want to talk to you about and we can share with each other, but I want to jump in, not in the most predictable space, but probably in the most necessary space. I want to start our conversation today about joy. I know
Yeah.
you are coming off the heels of the Black Joy Parade, and I
Oh my.
know GirlTrek, I am talking today. She needs no introduction to Vanessa Renee, who is the co-founder and the leader of GirlTrek, the largest health movement in America for Black women. And GirlTrek's newest initiative is called Joy and Justice. You're coming off of the heels of the Black Joy Parade, and I love that you're pairing the two together. So I wanted just to jump in and say, in these crazy times, what is bringing you joy, and what is the role of joy in justice work?
I cannot think of a better first question because I did not know how I was going to fold this into the conversation. But thank God I can show you my t-shirt. Let me explain to you the F the Black Joy Parade. I got this old
Yes.
school vintage t-shirt that says Marcus,
Wow.
Malcolm, Martin, Marley, Mandela, and me. And then on the back it says it's a Black thing you wouldn't understand. It was from an era where you had to just be there to really know. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, I need this t-shirt in my life. It just felt so good. And the parade in general, it felt so good. So, wow. It just, there is a level of just steadiness that we have as a people that we do not give ourselves credit for.
Hmm.
It's like the secret sauce that they keep trying to crack the code, but they cannot. Because if you look at the illustrations at the bottom of those slave ships, it doesn't even make sense, right? It don't even make sense how we could have survived that. But that, whatever that was, shows up in those Cutlass Supremes on rims, and it showed up in the babies on the shoulders, and it showed up in all the crip walking, and it showed up in, there was some fly young Black girls like up on the stage. And I was thinking, wow, like there's a place in the conversation even for this level of like strategy and joy and Black girl like energy that the younger generation of girls has, that's so impressive, where they're taking what our great grandmothers and their great grandmothers had and they're owning it for like a new generation. But it's still the same thing. We each got a brand of it. Like our brand, I think we're about the same generation. Our brand was like Nia Long, Love Jones. Like it was kind of like, that's a brand of Black girl-ness thing. But these girls got the same thing. It's just different. And I love seeing that like familiarity, the aunties out there. It just was so beautiful. And kudos to the organizers, because those things are not magic. And I'm talking about permits and order, traffic, bathrooms, like all the actual things that we need when we're going to talk about how do we manifest these things in our community. So it was all around superb. It really was.
Amazing. Ugh, I feel like I wish I was there, but I feel some of it through the screen of you talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is, how do we replicate that? How do we scale it? How do we both not scale it up, but scale it in? Like there's so many questions I have leaving from there.
Yeah. And the new, it's not a new platform, but the explicit platform of GirlTrek right now, talking about joy as and justice and the role that they play together is not often what you hear. I mean, I think you hear about the protest, you hear about the community organizing, you hear about the strategies, but less often do you hear that a part of the strategy of our justice work is joy and how we articulate and express, show, and model joy as a part of our justice work. And so I just think it's so profound that GirlTrek is naming it explicitly. And can you talk about the role of joy in the work that you do and why this initiative is kind of framed in that way.
Yes, definitely. To first address the first thing you said around how it's not traditionally talked about, I was just listening to what you said, and I'm like, it's because of the patriarchy. And I don't even use that word hardly ever, but like, I don't know another word to best describe that the story has been told through the lens of the male gaze and the male story. And we know that from like the women who were behind the scenes, really the architects. But because of that, the story has been told in a way where it's just modeling masculinity, or this kind of like white dominated way of which we understand how movements are built, because that's the story that people are paying attention to. It's a story that's going to get written in the textbooks. It's the stories that the publishers wanted to publish, like all of that, because they didn't understand the sophistication behind women standing over a pot of greens actually talking strategy. And they didn't understand the sophistication of knitting clubs as underground secret networks and garden clubs as the same. And so that's partially, by the way, because we didn't want them to understand it. And that's a question that we got to grapple with right now. Like, what do we hold sacred? How do we pass down those traditions? And then how do we honor that then when the story gets told, people don't understand it? But it's like, do the people who need to understand it? That's what I think we maybe have to really ask ourselves. And then, of course, how do we value that work? So for me, that's how the role Joy plays in the work that GirlTrek does, because we see the value in the strategy of survival skills that Black women honed, that Black women curated, that are a bit like, they're spiritual, it's magical, it's real, it's tangible. It's like every single thing we think it is, right? And we really value it. And the very first way we valued it was in the fact that Harriet Tubman walked herself to freedom.
Mm.
Walking was a form of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
That walking has been used as a form of resistance throughout time, across oceans, and all sorts of forms. We saw it show up through the Black Lives Matter protests. We saw it show up in South Africa. We've seen it show up through the Montgomery bus boycott. So we really understood walking not as a fitness ask for women, but as a continue this tradition. And that the tradition allowed us to organize, it allowed us to demonstrate, and it brought so much joy in the coming together in our communities, in the way that GirlTrek is such a joyous movement, that as we've now mobilized 1 million Black women and we asked ourselves what we were going to do next, which is to increase life expectancy for Black women, we said, well, how? And we're going to say, do what we've been doing, which is living our healthiest, most fulfilled life. And that requires a lot of designed joy, and it requires a lot of designed organizing against systems demanding justice.
Profound. And I think that, it's where we intersect in this storytelling of who we are as a people, and ensuring that in the stories that we're telling, that joy, celebration, traditions, rituals, the things that we hold sacred and pass down are a part of, an intricate part and a foundational part of our strategy work. Because, to your point, the struggle is an extension of the patriarchy. The joy is an extension of our people. And, what is the gospel song? This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world will take it away.
Won't take it away, yes.
Feels very resonant in the work that we both do.
We need a tambourine. Tambourines are symbols of resistance. Let me go ahead and look. We need tambourines in our lives.
My mother would often say, joy sits at the root of the science and secret of soul. And so if we are moving in the direction of freedom, or as she would say, we're already free, but, decrutting and unearthing our articulation of how free we are and how free we can be, and how we get other people to awaken to their own liberation, it has to be rooted in joy and in care. So as you can tell, I've been so excited to have this conversation with you, Vanessa. We were saying earlier when we were waiting to come on, the story that I wanted to share with you is one that's deeply personal, and I don't think I've ever publicly talked about this. I am about 15 years into this job, being the CEO of National Black Theatre. And my 15 years ago, when my mother passed away of a heart attack at 71 years old had nothing to do with theater or storytelling. Well, it did have to do with storytelling, but my yes came from the space that I watched this Black woman give her life for a theater, for a sector, for a people, for a community that was actively erasing her from her own story and her own narrative. And I thought that my yes could be a yes to writing her back in, rightfully writing her back into her own story. And I thought I knew everything about my mom because we were best friends. And she would sit on my bed on evenings and cry and lament and celebrate all of her wins and all of her defeats. And I knew very intimately what I thought was her struggle and what I thought was her path. But towards the end of her life, maybe 3 years before she passed away, she kind of had a new meditation about walking. She was like, these doctors want me to walk. I gotta walk. I gotta walk. Who had got time to walk? But it was like a mantra and a meditation in my house. And eventually, she was like, well, if I'm gonna walk, I need a walking partner. And I watched this community partner with my mother on her walks, whether it was our neighbors, our friends. And ultimately, her most consistent walking partner was my aunt, Billie Avery, who I was saying to you, the founder of Black Women's Health Imperative. And what I didn't understand, but I understand now, and through the work of GirlTrek, Billie's yes was trying to save her life. And as she began to walk with my mother got addicted to taking walks because it wasn't for the health benefits. Billie knew that and was being subversive. It became her dream space. And so she would walk in order to dream. She would walk in order to solidify the blueprint and the pedagogy of NBT. And Billie would hold space for her dreams, knowing that it would extend her life. And so she started that about like maybe 5 to 7 years before she passed away. And so I'm telling you that story because your work has awakened that ancestral story within me of seeing this mantra and this meditation that I was around but didn't understand until your work explicitly is calling for Black women to walk, not only to extend their life expectancy and for all of the health impact that it can have on our people, and the statistics which are well documented on your website. Folks should check out girltrek.org. But also, can you talk about this dream space that walking delivers us to, this altar of ourselves that becomes alive when we strap our sneakers on and we take a walk around our community?
Yeah, it's look, it's first of all a spiritual dream space around connecting with spirit, whatever that means to folks, but breath, right? And that means to let your shoulders down, to let your fears drop, to open yourself up to possibility. And that is hard to do for Black women. We are in a posture of defense. We are in a posture of protection. And it's been necessary, but we also have to develop a new muscle around the practices that are going to allow us to trust ourselves. So we've been in such survival mode that so many Black women, we have it, everybody, we have it, it's intrinsic, we're fighting for it every day. We see ourselves grasping for it, right? But to walk, to move your body, to allow yourself to connect with that safety inside means you can tap into such a more consistent space where you can experience yourself without fear, where you can experience yourself without worry or doubt, where you can trust yourself. And that happens through rhythm. It's like you're hitting the pavement. It happens through your actual blood pumping, your heart pumping. It happens through like the air hitting your skin. Like you could fight against it, but only for so long. So there is a guarantee at the end of every single walk that it is medicine, like in the deepest, most possible way. So that part where it heals your soul, it heals your body, it heals your mind.
Yeah, I think not enough is spoken about just moving your body. Like we are embodied human beings. Like we were meant, there is a master plan that keeps us siloed, that keeps us, in our spaces, constricted to information that is fed to us. But the universe and the earth has messages for us. And, I think some of the crisis of today is that we don't move the way we used to. We don't find dance floors the way we used to find dance floors. We fellowship in a way that is antithetical to our humanity. And in that, it is antithetical to our survival. The fact that you marry it with joy, or that joy is a byproduct of this, of moving our bodies and walking, is such an exciting prospect. So like today was the first day where I was like, in the name of my mother, Barbara Ann Tier, and her mother, Lila B. Tier, and before her, Mary Rivers, like I'm going to start walking, because what I find, and I'm emotional because, as you know, like the safest spaces that we can create are the ones within us. We can facilitate narrative change and storytelling, and you're one of the most incredible storytellers I've ever heard. But those stories are really intended to fertilize our own gardens, and in what grows within us, we can help to feed others differently. And so I see this cycle of movement and as a way in which to be in so much more intimate connection with the mothers and the women that came before me, while also seeding what is possible for the future. So I just really want to thank you for your work, because it is all of that and so much more. And your numbers of women that you've gotten to walk in their own communities. And this is what I guess maybe the next question I have is about safe space. And I have a little bit of a controversial take on safe space, but so many of our communities outward facing, in the way that the patriarchy or the way in which our communities are portrayed in the media, are the least safe spaces. But through the narrative change of how, and the reclamation work of walking, tell us about how you are creating safe space for community through the walking of because I think, part of the reason why MBT was founded was my mother wanted to course correct these narratives that were not expressive of the fullness of who we are as Black people. And walking one's community, especially those that have been deemed underserved, really does awaken a different notion of what it means for our communities to be indeed safe spaces. So I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the role of safe space in the work that you do, and how you use storytelling to as a tool for narrative change through this work.
I keep looking away because I have to write all these things down in my notebook, because it's like this. I'm just really, you're saying so many powerful things. Before I answer that, and this is such an important, essential question, and I have even been inspired by this idea of course correcting on narrative change. But first, I just want to offer this to you. GirlTrek has a tradition called Daughters of. And it's how we bring every woman into the room with us every time. And it's just exactly what you just did. So I'm just offering it even to every woman who's listening, so that they can pause and hear what you said. I am Vanessa, the daughter of Annette, who was the daughter of Olympia, who's the daughter of Melvina, who's the daughter of Katie. And we ask women to name and know their daughters of stories, even if they are naming and knowing non-biological people, even if they're naming and knowing their village, even if they have to go back and do the research, and that's the impetus for understanding. But there is so much alchemical wisdom like in it that I just loved. I was like, oh, she's doing her daughters of stories. So there's so please, y'all, do your daughters of stories. Yes, do your daughters of stories, everyone out there. And then I want to go to what you said about the narrative change, because you were like, often our communities are the least safe. Now, here's the thing.
Perceived as the least safe.
Perceived. And that is so essential, because I'm here right now, deep in East Oakland on Fruitvale. And you know how it goes, because this is the Airbnb I could afford. And there's a whole dichotomy there around what's happening in the neighborhoods with Airbnbs and all of that. But it's definitely a community that everybody told me to be careful around walking outside, because they know how I like to walk. Meanwhile, I have felt so held by the community, by the corner boys, by the Mexican lady looking outside her window, by the familiarity, that I'm just like, I actually have felt least unsafe in my hometown of Seattle, in a space that goes so blue and liberal, but actually is hostile deep and right under the core. I feel deeply unsafe at times right now in Washington, D.C. because of what is happening on the streets of my beloved community and right down deep in my neighborhood, right? Like, I feel unsafe in the digital spaces because the platforms, in terms of both understanding that they're monetizing our pain, that they are extracting our genius, and then that they're taking us away from even just being outside, getting fresh air, walking, because we're stuck up at our screens. Like I feel like every time I open my app at this point, I am just like, what? Like, we all go to rehab. Like, I promise to God, like, we need to understand that Nia Long and they didn't have those platforms, and that the love of our grandmothers who had rent parties, right? And the love of sitting on that stoop in the Women of Bristol Place, and the love of Double Dutch, and the love of those type of things. Like, we better not let our baby girls lose those things, because these apps are snatching their souls like this, and they snatched ours, and now we all own it together, and everybody know the dance. Like, and you singing the dance in the morning time, you singing the dance at the nighttime, and it's just like, what? It's like,
oh gosh, I love the way you speak, because you're always bringing in culture to the conversation of the quality of our lives. And I think part of the crisis that has long since been happening is that the extraction of our culture in the name, and then calling it art or calling it storytelling, without the culture, without the stoop, without the pot of greens, without the recipe or the ritual, ain't art. It ain't like. And so if narrative change is just to remind ourselves what we were taught to forget, then that is the alchemy that has been missing, that makes what it is we do and how we be with each other so thin in the pursuit of something that was never intended for us in the first place. And so, we're in MBT's 56th season. Founded in 1968 by Dr. Barbara Ann Tier. Our 56th season is entitled "The Journey," the Pilgrimage, a Journey Back Home. And this season, all season long, we were really inspired by going back and re-looking at the Greenbooks, right? The Negro Motorist Greenbooks, which, for folks that don't know, was a travel guide that was started in the 30s by a Black community, by a Black man who began to write about spaces that were safe for Black people to travel, or for Black travelers to go. And in that, the wisdom of, we always need an underground railroad. We always are seeding an underground railroad. And so what will our underground railroad look like today. I'm curious from your perspective, what does the underground railroad look like for us today as we are seeding and finding each other and trying to create this perception of safe space? And then I will go into like what my complications with safe space are, because I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it too.
People are going to think this is a paid commercial and that you secretly knew this and organized this in advance. But I promise y'all, you're going to watch this and know this woman did not know this, but this is how God moves in a movement this powerful. On March 10th, GirlTrek is going, which is Harriet Tubman Day. And since 2013, GirlTrek has been organizing what we call Harriet House Parties on Harriet Tubman Day.
Wow.
And Harriet House Parties are just invitations for women to open up their doors to their own crews and communities and to honor her and to break bread and to talk about how we're going to hold each other accountable and walk towards our own freedom. And this year on March 10th, we're going to have a membership meeting where we invite our women to walk and talk with us on that day. And you can walk and talk from wherever you are. And I'm going to ask you to be a part of that conversation, Sade, because we are releasing that night a new tool called the Underground that is uniting Black women to walk in solidarity with each other, to have critical conversations just like this. So the first conversation is going to be this conversation on the Underground. And we will continue to find women like you and solution makers, unknown folks, and we are just going to get on the Underground and walk and talk together. And that's it. And it is coming out on March 10th. And right before this call, I'm just like struggling with like, are women going to get this? Are they going to understand? And I'm just like, this is what it is. Like, and it's not just this tool. The Underground is the network.
Talk about it.
The Underground is also the movement forward, the movement of the railroad itself. That we weren't going to stay put. That we were going to go to where we needed to go. We were going to get to our destination.
I have such chills, but that's how spirit works. Like, we've been trying to plan this talk since forever, and no one is busier than Miss Vanessa Renee. And
no, I'm not that busy. Y'all reject that. No, I have been resting though. I have been.
Well, that's important too. That is deeply important. That is deeply important. Last year, our
Can I tell you the truth, Sade? Actually, I'm not even kidding. I haven't neither been resting nor busy. I've been obsessed. I am obsessed with this movement. I am obsessed with the idea that we can heal ourselves. I am obsessed with solutions. I am obsessed with culture. Like it just overtakes me. So I just find myself on a day-to-day basis just being like, there's so much beauty in what we're all doing. And it feels sometimes like it's exhausting. Sometimes it feels like you need to rest from it. But I think this was probably the story of your mom for sure, like in her community, that they didn't rest from it. Like you saw it in the photos, you see it in the generations before them. We saw it in Zora and all those guys. Like we have something. So I grapple with like that because I wonder if we have bought into this idea around like needing to rest, even where it's like, is it fatigue or exhaustion, or is it something different, or can we name it as lack of inspiration, or who knows? But sometimes I think people are feeling things that are called exhaustion, that are something else. And I think sometimes those of us who even could source from a deep well are holding ourselves a little bit back because we don't understand how to like yield our own power for ourselves. And we're talking against ourselves and telling, like, it's a complicated thing, y'all, to be up here. But this is what I've been thinking about because I'm working on wellness and care every day and genuinely trying to wonder, like, what resonates? Like, what is it? How do we, there's a formula there. And I would love to like crack the code on it so that we can teach more women and teach them fast. Because when I tell you they was organizing and are organizing furiously against our life expectancy.
That is so resonant and real. I mean, it's like you would have to be obsessed to wake up every day to the statistics that you see and and be like, and we can do something about it. Nothing short of obsession is going to get us across a finish line, you know? So I appreciate you naming it in that way, because I think for my mom's generation, and a little bit for me, I suppose, if I take any space in her legacy, is often that energy gets labeled as crazy, right? Oh, you
Yeah.
crazy to buy that real estate. You crazy to think you can turn these numbers down. You crazy, right? We have been dismissed for generations and called our genius called crazy. And the labeling of that has othered many of us, has been so painful that folks walk away from the voices in their head, because the longest journey often is from your head to your heart, and trying to figure out that connective tissue to make the obsession, um, um, which is the wrestling of action made real, is what all of the great women in our lives, and great by just being present in our lives in a way, have always had to grapple with, this dismissal of our spirit that was handed down for us, whispered in our ear as prayer from generation after generation, that exists in the darkness of the night, that exists in our dreamscape. This conversation last year we did with the Bishop of Napping, Trisha Hersey.
Oh, yes.
Trisha, talks so brilliantly and beautifully about this exact thing around, is it exhaustion or is it something else? Is it our dreams? Is it the prayers that were whispered become so loud that you have no choice but to say them out loud and make them real? And I think that for theater, theater too is a vehicle by which we heal ourselves, that we heal ourselves through narratives that center the fullness of who we are, that demand us to be 100% authentic in our humanity, to articulate the things that were stolen from us as our greatest treasure, and then to share them with the world. Because when we tap into that science and secret of soul, we are tapping into a vibrational frequency where not only am I hold the keys to my own liberation and freedom, but by modeling my own liberation and freedom, I give folks permission to do the same. And
That's right.
The work that you all do is, not enough is said by witnessing what you're doing, not just the doing of what you're doing, right? But to watch, and I'm sure, like, when I see an audience, looking at an audience when they are inspired by a play and you see transformation happening, and it's not happening in the artist, that might have already have happened through the process, but to see the witnesser change. I'm curious, and this wasn't one of my questions, because I do want to talk about safe space in a specific kind of way, but can you talk about the power of witnessing women walk? So we know the impact of walking 30 minutes a day and the movement that you all are ushering forward. But do you have stories about how the witnesser, while watching that being modeled, has shifted and changed communities or created more safe and sacred space?
Yeah. First, I'm thinking of the women witnessing themselves. And there is so much power in it. Like, it is the thing. They be just like, what? Like, it's powerful. And I'm just talking about like witnessing themselves. Like, I'm popping my collar. Like, it feels good. And I'm talking about right now, our movement trends a little bit older. And we're really focused on bringing in the next generation, because movements require us to bring them along and to create space. But I'm talking about 60-year-old women who are just figuring out that they can witness themselves. and what that means for them in their lives. And it's so powerful to watch that. And then it's the witnessing of each other. I'm talking about these crews that have been out here and these communities that have been built. I was at the Black Joy Parade yesterday, and there were so many women in their GirlTrek blue. And I put this over my shoulders even when I took it off intentionally, because we are intentional about a movement of solidarity where we could see each other, a movement of superhero blue because we think we are the superheroes, a movement where even the print on the shirt it's orange and blue, and it's orange and yellow, and it's intentionally this loud and this proud because we wanted the little girls to be able to look out their window and see their mothers walking and point out to them, and that it looked great in photos, and we wanted to be able to share our photos and for our beautiful bright skin to dominate narratives, the timelines with the new narrative. When we first launched GirlTrek and we got our first website, it was 2010. And Facebook had just started. So we were just like, let's use this platform to organize. And we're like, well, nobody will know what GirlTrek is, so we have to name the page something. And we decided to name it Healthy Black Women and Girls, because we were like, well, those are the words I might search if I was looking for somebody. So the page became Healthy Black Women and Girls. And when we went to find photos to then use on the girltrek.org website, when you put Healthy Black Women and Girls in Google, pornographic images were coming up.
Wow.
If you would put Black woman riding on a horse, it was like some crazy stuff. And there was a landscape out there where there was such a dearth of like models for what healthy across body sizes, healthy across regions, healthy across ages, like healthy across not just this one idea of what like getting in the gym looks like, right? And we wanted to redefine health in a way that we had an aspiration to even want to live longer. Because a part of the suppression of our community has been to both through church, and I am a faithful believer, but church that teaches us that go ahead and wait on the other side and you don't have to have it here in this earth, through all sorts of in conditioning. We are in a place where many women, when we say let's live longer, don't have that. They're like, oh, why? It's a today mentality. It is the today mentality that's sold in, the Mega Millions and the Powerball. It's the today mentality that has kept us at the layaway. It's a today mentality that is like the payday loan, and it's a vicious cycle. And it is intentional, and it is because we want to feel good. And when we do not feel good, like we want to feel good now. And it is at the core of the crack cocaine epidemic. It is at the core of the obesity epidemic, because trust and believe that I want to eat some macaroni and cheese in the bed are feeling bad, and I deserve it. And I mean that in the possible way. When your man is in prison and you haven't had physical touch, and your dad never even knew how to show you physical touch, so you've not even felt that. And now you're a young girl trying to get physical touch in the ways that you can, or a woman who's surrendering to other things. It is so intrinsic that we have been divorced and disconnected from our bodies and traumatized and disconnected from our practices and our habits. And when you look across the board and see us still like living and still like finding that joy that I saw in that parade, and still, that's why it's just like, wow, like I just want to harness that, because I do believe that's what the answer is. Harness it. And that's where space matters. Harness it so much that it breaks the atmosphere. Like when we used to say in church, like we're going to shift the atmosphere. Harness it so much that it like becomes undeniable. Harness it in spaces where it's so powerful that it's impenetrable.
It is the only thing that has proven to get us through, a way out of no way. It is the singular thing. What you're saying is the singular thing that has allowed us to survive for all of these generations. Oh my God, I want to talk to you about so many things, because a part of me is like, if what is happening right now in America, what is happening right now has all been seen before, is out of a playbook, then like, what is new? Like, how are we approaching these times, these perilous times that our ancestors have lived through, have seen before? But what will it be? And they always say history repeats itself, but what will it be about today? What will it be about who we are as a people that will be new in this moment in time in order not to break the generational and the traumatic cycles of what has happened in the past. I was listening to a talk that Felicia Rashad said, and she said, yes, this is a playbook. Yes, ain't nothing new under the sun, but how we approach it can be new. And I'm curious from your vantage point, like, what is the new that breaks this cycle of generational trauma, of state terror, of all of the things that we're seeing unfold today?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I don't personally know if it's a new thing.
Mm.
I personally think that that's how they have kept us confused and on our toes.
Mm.
I think the idea that we have to continuously figure out how we respond to the moment of what they're doing with some fresher strategies because our other strategies didn't work is not true.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think we've had the most effective strategies consistently. I think a lot of those successful strategies are some of the things we talked about. They're ancestral. I think some of them are organizing strategies. I think some of them are communication strategy, hip hop being one of them, right? Like the theater being another. Like these are successful strategies. Like, I mean, hello, Paul Robeson. And I actually think have to figure out how to stay the course in a way, because that's what those who have been effective against our well-being are doing.
Mm.
Their playbook is 1492, Columbus
Mm-hmm.
sailed the ocean blue.
Mm-hmm.
And that playbook, they have just stayed true to. So the only times they've been effective, that's what I'm saying, we have made so much progress. This is the other thing. Like, that's where like we can't actually be in a moment of despair. And I know what it looks like out there. I know what's happening. I understand Project 2025. I see how like it was like before already even planned. So for those of us who are in a moment of despair right now, I think what we have to do is like when Octavia Butler was seeing towards the future, like our future, what we are organizing for, how we are organizing that spirit, we got to stay in the future of the vision.
Mm.
And that place, we are holding the vision so tight that it cannot take us off course on the things that we are doing because we've already foreseen, already called in, already imagined, like when they say our ancestors' wildest dream stuff. Like, so that's where we just got to hold that and just, I don't know any other way because I don't think it's, I mean, I have seen, I'm in the Bay, like these, the technology out here that'll drive you where you need to go and do this and all of that. And I'm saying we're not going to be able to outfast their $1 billion of technology and their satellites that are doing this and we're not going to be able to change the fringes of people, of our own peoples who's still going to be over there. And they're saying that the political polls are saying this or that. It's always going to be a little shift on the wherever. It really ain't even what it is. I promise you, like some of our acting up all the time. Sometimes they go over here, sometimes they go over there, but it ain't no trend that's going to break us. Right. So like we have to like just trust that like we really do got it. And like, I don't know, like when you think of, I was thinking of them like at the parade, the Shriners and the Elks.
Yeah.
Like when you think about the AME church, like when like I just am like, we got some real institutions and some real power, and it needs they need some love. We need some protection.
Yeah.
You know, we better value them. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think we maybe are focused sometimes on what do we do new instead of how do we get our butts back up in them church pews? Because even if we're just keeping the building warm so that they don't snatch it and put some condos, that's a strategy.
Like, and I think ritual is strategy and traditions are strategy. And that when we talk about technology, we should always be talking about indigenous and ancestral technology, because that has always, like I said before, has been present and has allowed us to continue on another day. And I think that so much of the work, even in telling new stories, commissioning new work, all of it is an algorithm to support artists and our community to remember the things we were taught to forget. Like, that is the work, that the blueprint has been created. It is everything. It is every color of the rainbow that you saw in the Black Joy Parade. Those are the strategies by which we stay free. And those are the strategies, there's this African proverb my mom used to always say, if you know the beginning well, the end will not trouble you. The challenge is we tell our stories from a false beginning, but that if we could know the beginning well, that started with the beat, that started with the rhythm, that started with the movement, that started with the sound.
Yeah,
that
that's
we
beautiful.
would know. Yeah, right? That we would know that that is actually the blueprint, the game strategy in which we have envisioned a future that has yet to be called in. But a part of the work, really, to your point of what feels like we're up against, is the trap, right? You're supposed to think, oh, the trap is new, so let me see if I can do something new with this new. And instead, it is really a remembering. And this is why, a full circle moment in this conversation is like, my mom walked to be free. She didn't walk for health, but it extended her life. Her numbers were so crazy. People would say she should and could drop dead any day. And to walk, she lived 5 to 7 years.
And it didn't just extend her life. This is back to your point about joy. It brought her joy.
Yes.
Like, I think sometimes, trust me, because one time me and my cousin, I will not mention her name because she will be mad, because cousins, but we got into a major actual fight on a walk because she said I made her walk too far, right? And I was like, we barely walked. And she was experiencing a lot of discomfort and a lot of pain because she hadn't been physically active and hadn't been walking before. And so I keep trying to push her because I'm like, on the other end, it's this thing that you can't even understand. It's going to make you feel like this. It's going to make you feel like that. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't think you understand where I'm at. So are you listening and are you understanding? So I get that part of like where we are a lot of times, like in our bodies and in our spirits and all of these things where it's like we don't understand. But so when we say like she did it for her health or she lived longer, I think sometimes I know a lot of women where they're just like, well, then I'm gonna just be where I'm at because this is where I'm dealing with. Yeah. And that's a hierarchy of needs situation where I'm doing what I can do, ma'am. And I don't even feel good enough to try to get to this thing but that's where we have to really, really demonstrate the joy because we can make women believe it. We can make them believe it. Yeah. It radiates from us, right? It radiates from women. That's when I said they witness themselves. So part of the storytelling and narrative change is to create platform for the authentic experiences of women. That's what we try to do in our movement and wherever we are at in our journeys, so that we can demonstrate that it gets better, but that it was hard to get there. And it's real. And so like Morgan and I, when we launched GirlTrek, and we still do it, we write a personal email to the movement every week. The email is like, got a divorce this week, or this didn't work out this week, or just not feeling it this week, or whatever. But for us, the authenticity to say like, this is where we are on our healing journey. And then to have a platform and permission to say, I met a fine man. We just got engaged. We eloped to Paris. These good things. This is really my life, y'all. Like all that too. And to have a crew to root for me. Like, it's such a beautiful thing. And to be like, I'm on a 30-day walking street, or I'm just starting over. Like, and for the women on the couch and the women who can't move and the women who are just, sometimes we are paralyzed with fear.
Yes.
Sometimes we are weighed down with a sadness so deep that no amount of doctors telling us how good this is going to do it. Sometimes like the real circumstances of your man saying, I don't even want you to leave out this house, keep us in. Like there's so many circumstances that I hadn't even considered when I started doing this work that I now understand as like the barriers. And so one of the greatest responsibilities that I feel like we have is to teach and remind Black women, and not the world at large, never mind them, but mainly Black women, that's not your fault. Like you're not making this up. You're not just lazy. You can't, you know what I'm saying? And that has been the dominant narrative of Black women's health for 400 years.
Oof. Oh, what gets me up in the morning often, speaking of fear, speaking of the inner story, which is the most important story that will ever be told, is the stories that we tell ourselves, right? As you're saying, is my mom would always say, where there is love, there is no fear. I think that so often you can get caught in the fear that you focus on that as the destination. But if you could widen the aperture to understand that anything in the world where there is love, right? So this has also become this lesson around how we have to love ourselves first, in the same way that we have to witness ourselves first. But where there is love, there is no fear. And I can't tell you, Vanessa, how often when I don't have anything left to give, putting my 2 feet on the ground when I wake up in the morning, I tell myself, because the thing that I'm clear about is the love I have for myself and my people and my community.
That's right.
So where
Yes.
is love, there is no fear. So of course I can build $100 million building. Of course I can like take on the American theater field and make it a liberatory movement that pours resources and attention and capital into my own people. And I can make these doors and these spaces that have never been built for us to be welcomed in, to be a Black Joy parade every time I open the door, because I love me and us so much that these spaces that have never been deemed as safe, I am fearless in the face of, because my love is so much bigger than anything, than any fear I can imagine. And I think one of the gifts of so many gifts of my mother and so many gifts of the work of the National Black Theatre is that we are in the business of liberation, which requires us to be fearless and decrutting ourselves from the box that is theater or cultural arts, but to really define our business as liberation. Then there's no place we can't go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's no place that we can't go, and there's no limit on like the possibility of the type of world we can go to. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think it exists yet. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, even, you know what I'm saying? And that's exciting. That's where, for me, joy is also sourced. Like, we're not just trying to do this stuff so that we could stick around in this world and be liberated in this space, but our liberation looks like this over here in this way.
And that is why the underground is so important, because that is where we will be fully expressed. Not all of our joy, not all of our magic, and most of our strategy is not for anybody but us. And to be able to create a network by which we can tussle with, we can experiment, we can fail up, we can succeed. And the fruits of that is what we are able to lean into to create this future, but that the recipe, the ritual, is something that we save for ourselves and we pass on in the tradition of our mothers before us. My last question, and also just to say, you know, we can continue this conversation online. If people have questions or comments while we post, when we post this, you can ask them, and BT will answer some, and if our conversation comes to an end. But I didn't say that up front. But I think my last question, I have so many more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time and my time and y'all's viewers' time. What is time? It's a construct, so maybe there is no time. But I've been wrestling with this idea of safe space through the pandemic and really some hard and dark times. I have come to the conclusion that I don't know if I believe in safe space, because what is safe for one person is not necessarily safe for another. And Lord knows we're at a time in this country that for whom this country feels safe feels very dangerous for others. And that safe space doesn't necessarily come with a measure of accountability, which is why it cannot be safe. what I think has measures of accountability and has a more transformative outcome is spaces of care. And that
Say it
only
again.
spaces of care.
Ah.
The only thing we can really guarantee that we can be accountable for is how we create spaces of care and conditions of care. And
Yeah.
hopefully through care, folks feel safe, but that safety is a construct that doesn't translate through language, neighborhood, community. So I'm curious your thoughts around care in relationships to safety and safe space and caring in spaces that are curated by care.
Yeah, I loved conditions of care, and I agree exactly with you around spaces of care. Um, Almost a year and a half ago, GirlTrek purchased, had the honor of purchasing, becoming the owners of our million members are now the owners of Bricklayers Hall, which was the home of Dr. Martin Luther King's office and the home of the Montgomery Improvement Association in Montgomery, Alabama. So we now own that historic building, and it's now GirlTrek's new southern headquarters. It's in the historic Cherry Hill district. We'll start inviting people to stop by. There's a historic marker out there. It's amazing. I bring that up because the strategy behind us acquiring that space is that we are starting something called a care village. And the care village is, what are the conditions of care for us as a collective and a crew who live in a proximity of each other? So we're already a global and networked movement, and we have our crews, and we walk online and we do all sorts of stuff. But GirlTrek asked ourselves, if we all live in a particular neighborhood, how would we consolidate our resources? How would we bring in partners to give more resources? And how would we be the caregivers for each other to knock on each other's doors and ask, are you okay? And could we use the infrastructure of walkers that we have in a particular neighborhood to commit to do that, train them to be mental health first aid responders, train them to actually deliver services when women need it, or to refer services and know what those services are for her neighborhood and community, and just commit to being a woman that she can walk and talk with in her neighborhood, because we believe that's a responsibility that we have. We had a responsibility for each other in a way that we have lost it because of a combination of different things. So we must commit to rebuilding those networks, and we can't be passive about them. And every person can rebuild a network, and every person can figure out what that network looks like for you. It doesn't have to be the same exact thing. But for GirlTrek, we believe our network is the 1 million women who are walking with us. And now we have a real unique opportunity to coordinate care for our neighbors and invite them into the network. And for me, conditions of care is figuring out how we do that proximate to the communities who are caring for us.
Oh, well, what a beautiful way to end our conversation, talking about the power of care and this new chapter of GirlTrek, which are this care village. I'm so grateful to count you as a part of my care village. I am so grateful for the work that you are so obsessed with that will continue to heal our people and our communities. I am so grateful that you have created the conditions of care by which we tell our stories more fully. And that at the root of everything we do is a holistic approach to how we save our lives. And a part of that is through changing the narrative. And a part of that is how we strap on our sneakers. A part of how we save ourselves, which are the only folks who have ever come to save us, is by knowing each other more fully, by supporting each other to remember, as I've said before, what we were taught to forget, and that our rituals, that our traditions are our highest form of technology. And so this conversation has poured so much into me personally.
Me too.
I'm so grateful that you would take us space and time and come to us from sunny Oakland to have this conversation with MBT and me today. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so honored. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your leadership. I appreciate how you, what we say, model the mission, like you are exemplar in terms of just showing up in such a powerful way. And I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Enjoy, everybody. I hope share this conversation with those in your community or anyone you think needs to hear a word. You can find GirlTrek at girltrek.org. You can find us at nationalblacktheatre.org. Happy Black History Month. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Thanks so much.